We're less than a month away from this year's primary elections in the 1st congressional district race. Now, Republican Janice Arnold-Jones is running unopposed in the primary, but 6 Democrats are running, and that's a crowded field. That seat is vacant because Michelle Lujan Grisham is running for governor. Now, in case you don't know, CD1 covers Albuquerque, most of Bernalillo County, and Torrance County, but it also includes parts of Santa Fe, Sandoval, and Valencia counties. It's a weird, huge district. Now, this week's Line Opinion panelists are ready to talk about this race and other stories in the news this week. I'm joined at the table by Laura Sanchez-Rivey, an attorney at Cuddy & McCarthy LLP. We're glad she's here. She's feeling a little under the weather. You're a great trooper. New panelist Jeffrey Candelaria is with us. He's an entrepreneur and owner of Connection Now, LLC. You might know him as host of the Jeffrey Candelaria Show on 770 KKOB. Welcome. Glad you're here. Former State Senator Dianne Snyder is back with us, and attorney and regular line panelist Sophie Martin is with us as well. Now, Soph, one of the big stories this week was a political ad released by Pat Davis, Democrat. Can't say the word he used in this ad about the NRA, but let's
we
just
all
say,
know it.
But we all know what the
Yes.
word is and his sentiment. It got him, I'm going to imagine what he needed to get. He was on MSNBC, he was on Fox. He got worked over a little bit by Tucker Carlson, but it's out there. Was that a good long play for him? Has that worked out?
When you use the phrase long play, that's where I think it gets a little bit complicated.
Gotcha.
Because
Yeah.
I think that in the primary, he probably has a decent chunk of the Democratic primary voter, as opposed to the Democratic general election voter, who might find that kind of exciting. In fact, I've seen on his Facebook page people saying like, yes.
That's right.
And I think that he was really suffering, as a number of the 6 in that pack are suffering from the fact that there are too many of them. And I mean, you know, not from a like strength of our democracy kind of perspective, but from trying to get attention perspective. And so on some level, wow, he did it, right? I look at that ad and I think it's kind of like those Super Bowl ads that people run where they're like, we hope that the network tells us we can't run this ad because we will get millions of dollars of exposure on the internet and through news and things like that. The challenge, I think, is this. If he makes it to the general, and I think that's a pretty big if at this point, if he makes it to the general, he's going to be facing the general electorate. And the entire Democratic Party, all of the voters in that party are not going to be behind him on either the sentiment or the way he expressed the sentiment. So it was a gamble.
Right.
But, you know, he's in a position where maybe a gamble is what he needs.
Right. I hear that point. You know, Jeffrey, he mentioned that the reason he did the ad ostensibly was to get a conversation going about gun violence. Did he attain that, or was something else being talked about from that?
Absolutely the reverse.
Yeah.
And it's not just because I tend to be a conservative, but when you bring insolence as the basic hallmark of your message, you just tune people out. The problem with the message also, I think, is it's not only insolent and impertinent, but it's the reverse of what he says he's trying to do. I heard him in a second interview say that he wants to continue the conversation. He's not going to pull the ad till we have a conversation about the NRA. But why would I want to have a conversation with somebody like that that's positioned himself in what I call monolithic absolutism? He's saying, I absolutely the NRA, right? So how can someone that we may elect for political office, and in the hopes of having a free market discussion, have even any sense that he's willing to have a discussion when he's basically said, I'm absolutely against everything they stand for. So there's no redeeming aspect to the NRA.
Interesting point.
And it's a complicated world. So there is no such thing as the NRA representing one monolithic absolute platform.
As proven by our Senator Martin Heinrich as a longtime NRA member. What did you make of the ad when you saw? We're going to move on to some other stuff certainly, but I want to get your sense of this as well.
Several things.
Okay.
One is, I think, along with what Jeffrey was just saying, is when you say that you're to whatever the word he used, the NRA, the NRA, in spite of many things that we don't agree with, is an advocate for the Second Amendment. There are many people on both sides who are advocates for the Second Amendment.
That's right.
It's a modification of that and how it's being implemented that's the issue. As a former legislator and a candidate many times, I found it so offensive. I don't, there is absolutely no, in my opinion, legitimate reason for doing and say using vocabulary like that. Your ads are on. First of all, his ads are on in early evening, and children are still watching TV, and we try to at least get them to not use those words. I think also, as has previously been mentioned, he got exactly opposite of what he was trying to do. I used to teach lobbying classes or advocacy classes before I became a legislator. And one of the things I used as an example, do not hit a legislator up alongside the head with a 2-by-4 today and then go back tomorrow and expect that they will sit down and talk with you or support your issues.
Good point.
I don't think anybody from the NRA organization, I don't think Ollie North is going to go and sit down with Pat and discuss changes in positions in the NRA.
Sure.
So it's not a discussion about change. It's a discussion about getting more media coverage.
Right.
Which
Mission
is
accomplished, as they
my
say.
thing,
That's
which
right.
it has done.
That's right. That's right.
So.
You know, one can make the argument, Laura, that Pat's appealing to his natural constituency. He's pretty progressive, has always been. He's got that constituency behind him. But I guess my question I'm answering, we're all talking about here, does it play outside that constituency? What does it honestly do for him when it's go time, like Sophie mentioned on election day? Is it really going to carry him somewhere doing this tactic?
I think you're right that it plays to his constituency in particular. I think that it was intended to generate some media attention. I think it was successful in doing that. But whether he actually is able to pull people from the others, I think is debatable.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very crowded race. There's at least 2 people in the race that, well, I mean, there were 4 people that didn't even make the threshold for the pre-primary convention.
Right.
There was only 2 that did.
That's a good reminder,
They had
by
to
the
go
way.
back and get, and Pat being one of them, had to go back and get additional signatures.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're now in a situation where people are spending money. There's independent expenditure campaigns spending money for these candidates. And so you sort of forget what happened in March in terms of being able to have an organization to get as many votes as you needed to pass that threshold. So now it's all about the media hits. And unfortunately, there's this maxim of getting at least 7 hits for every voter. Like you need to have at least
right.
7 times that you touch that voter with something.
Yes.
What's interesting, as a registered voter in this district, I have yet to get any mail from Pat.
Oh, no
but
kidding.
I've gotten a lot of mail from the other candidates.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see what, how they're targeting their mail, or whether they're choosing to do more media buys than targeted mail. And everybody has a strategy for that. But certainly in a race like this, I think it's an attempt to get as much media as you can. I mean, I think we'll see some of this continue over the next few weeks, but
right.
I don't know that it's going to do a lot to move people to his camp.
Interesting
So, Gene,
point.
may I
Please.
compliment that
Yeah,
thought?
absolutely.
So, in a desperate attempt to garner media, which he did, and attention all over the country, I think Tucker Carlson interviewed him the other night. I like Tucker. I think he's a good debater, but he ambushed him. A separate conversation. In garnering all this attention nationally, he actually painted himself into a corner, and I think he actually shut down conversation by opening up with that insolent topic. So
Right.
when he says that he wants to have a conversation once again about the NRA,
Right.
but you paint yourself in a
I would
corner. How can you
argue
have
that this is-
how can you have a dialogue?
I would argue that it's somewhat generational. I mean, I grew up, and Pat grew up in the generation with F the Police, a major rap song. I mean, a major rap song that
It's part of the lexicon now.
very
It's-
much. And so, after that, I think F the NRA is a lot less impactful unless for that generation, because we have heard that language about our institutions.
So, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, Jeffrey, my fault. What do you think made this race so hot this year, for this congressional race for Democrats? Did it just seem that open?
I think it's very
really
open.
okay.
It's an open district.
But I hear you on it's open, but there's a sort of a call that happens for certain people, like you mentioned. You're not going to be able to make the threshold. You haven't really done a lot of
call, or
work
is it
previously.
ego?
A second.
Is it a call or is it ego?
Right.
I mean, I think there's
Exactly.
a certain level of,
Yes.
and I have no doubt that at some level, all of them believe that there's a calling.
Right.
But you need to have a lot of self-confidence to withstand
Fair enough.
a race like this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, and unfortunately in a campaign you surround yourself by supporters and people who are working for you. So nobody's telling you, hey, you should probably rethink this.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. So a lot of people hang on for as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, I'm of the for me, it's somebody who's had a record of running is in a better position to run for another office. There's people in this race that have never run
That's
for
right.
anything. And
That's
they're
right.
running. There is, I think there's a little bit of the Trump factor, the fact that a lot of people were upset about 2016. You're seeing a lot of other special elections going against Trump. And so the Democrats are very much wanting to jump in, new blood, new voices, and all of that is good for our democracy. But I don't think that's new to New Mexico. If you look at 2008, when Domenici was no longer running, we had an open Senate seat. People jumped into that. People jumped into the congressional seats.
right.
At one point, we had 14 different federal races, campaigns happening here in New Mexico, 14 different campaigns. So I don't think this is new to New Mexico. We have this problem all the time.
Do you have a
problem?
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's interesting
Features.
though.
Yeah,
It's
features.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they also think because of the dynamics and statistics of the district I think many of them truly believe that whoever wins the primary is going to be the next.
Do we doubt that? I mean,
Yes, I do.
I would be very surprised if that didn't happen.
But surprises have happened. Mr. Trump is now president. So
Not in this district.
Yeah, but not-
This
yeah,
district
that's
didn't go
right.
for him. Well, I think
But-
though.
But
I
we've,
thought-
hang on.
but I think
We've
that-
had plenty of Republicans represent this CD1 district.
I was going to say from
I mean, a lot of Republicans going
for
back in
long,
1962,
long years,
for gosh
yes.
sake. You know,
So I don't think it's impossible. Do I
Right.
think it's a challenge? Yes. But I think, but back to the point is, I think the Democrats think it's a given.
Gotcha.
So that's why you got so many candidates
Right.
challenging and running and willing to spend money and their time and their effort.
Right.
And they're desperate to be that candidate.
Any wild cards out there? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's dangerous.
Okay.
I think that, I don't think the Democrats should assume that it's ours. Because when you do that, things like the election in 2010 happen.
Right.
Where
That's right.
everybody assumed it was Dianne Denish's,
That's right.
and then Susana Martinez ran away with it. So I think it's important to not
Good
take
reminder.
this for granted, not take the voters for granted. And I think that this district, to your point about, long-time history of other Republicans, certainly Heather Wilson,
Right.
it's also there's changing demographics in this district. There have been, and there's also a lot more independents. And so what's interesting is that for the primary, you see people running towards the polls, running towards the extremes to garner their votes in the primaries, who tend to be staunch Democrats or Republicans, and the independents don't have any vote whatsoever. And so then you see all those people in the general,
Right.
and I do think that there's an impact of that. And so those who end up doing things that are much more extreme
Right.
have to, backpedal
That's
for the
right.
general, and it's very
That's
difficult
right.
to do that.
Meanwhile,
I
Janice
can
Arnold Jones is
tell
at
you-
home watching this all going,
But I can tell you,
okay,
that
right.
if Matt Davis is the Democratic candidate, Janice Arnold Jones is going to Congress. So
Gene, can I come back to a point that Sophie?
If you can do it in
before?
20 seconds. Yep.
Yeah, just because something's part of the lexicon, I
Yeah.
think we should hold people we elect to a higher standard.
Fair enough.
That's all.
Fair enough. I like that a lot. Now I'll have to
Then we
wrap it up there. Go ahead.
President.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point there, too. That's
That
right.
was
That's fair.
lexicon.
That's a fair point. Now, when we come back to the line, we'll look at the effects of stable housing on child well-being here in New Mexico.